Yeah.
Yes, please. Thank you. All right, good evening and welcome to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. It is October 24th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. Would you please join me in a moment of silent prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance? Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right. Roll call, please.
Mr. Gokenauer is absent. Mr. Riva is absent. Mrs. Miller,
Here.
Mayor St. John,
Here.
Mrs. Cooper,
Here.
Mr. Lawrence.
Here.
Have 4 members and a quorum.
All right, good evening, everyone. The first item on the agenda is the commission review and discussion. The rezoning, the applicant has requested to rezone a portion of parcel 417-134-02-000-5007 from R2 low density residential district and R4 multifamily residential district to PRD planned residential district. The proposed rezoning is for a total of 39.87 plus or minus acres. They're located at the southern terminus of Kintner Parkway. This is tabled from July 25th, 2022 meeting. And I think we've had several pieces of feedback that have been incorporated into an amended plan slightly. taking feedback from the commission, also from the residents and from our engineer. And the first part of our process is the applicant presentation. Mr. Gary Smith.
Thanks, Mayor. There we are. Appreciate the opportunity to be in front of you again today. We kind of been down a little bit of a long road on this. We've been working on it for a while. We did have a pretty good meeting the last time we were here. We got a lot of really good feedback. Kind of in the interim, we took a little extra delay because it turns out our meeting was going to be on the same meeting as Vince's project. And we thought maybe the commission would appreciate separating those two out so that you didn't have a 5-hour evening to contend with. So we agreed to table to this meeting so that you guys can hear those things separately. That put us behind a little bit, but it also gave us time to have some meetings with the staff and get a few more things, I think, kind of wrapped up. So appreciate the opportunity to work with everybody. The city's been really good at kind of meeting with us and trying to outline a lot of these issues. So I don't know, Steve, if you can pull up our presentation. I just want to highlight really quick the changes that we've made, at least the substantive changes that we've made since we've been here. I also have one formal announcement. So Pulte is in contract for the development. So Pulte will be the builder. I know the last time we were here, we really couldn't announce that. We didn't have that formalized. And so we're trying to keep things a little bit more general. Matt Callahan is here with me here this evening. So if there's questions on architecture, those kind of things, I think Matt can address those directly. And then I'll go through the site plan. I also have Scott Mallory, the owner of Highland, can answer any questions about the development as well. So I think everybody's familiar with the site. At this point, we can probably roll on to the next slide. This was kind of what the mayor was talking about it. I think everybody remembers we have a mix of a couple of different zonings, and they're kind of legacy zonings. We don't really have a lot of information on them other than we've got the zoning map, but we don't really have a lot of paperwork on what was actually zoned at the time or a legal description for that zoning. But right now, the existing property, I guess that would be the western portion of the property is really zoned all R2, and then you've got kind of a sliver that runs along the front of multifamily in the orange there. And then you can see where the future Sunbury Parkway comes in and will ultimately tie into Route 3637 as well. And the next one, oops, it might be a little too large. So this was our plan that we initially submitted from a zoning standpoint. There were a couple of things I think that we got from a feedback standpoint from the city that we really had to go back and kind of try and incorporate. One of the major things, well, two of the major things were really this piece of property right here ends up being trapped. And so we need to figure out a way to get access to this piece of property because Sunbury Parkway is going to be very limited access. We had to figure out a way to get access to our site to the back of this property so that property wouldn't be stranded. So that had us change our site plan a little bit. We also have some feedback from the commission that the commission didn't want to see, or that we would appreciate some extra buffer here between the homes and the parkway. And then also the side yard setback. I mentioned to change those from 5 feet to 6 feet, similar to what we did for Eagle Creek and some of the other projects that have been permitted lately. So if you want to roll on to the next one, Steve. So these were the results of those changes. So you can see we've incorporated an access point through the project to this property. We have reconfigured the patio homes a little bit one of the other things that we did while we were going through making the changes to just try and help a little bit was to create a little bit of belly in this road. You can kind of see this road curves up now, whereas before it was straight across. Really just trying to break up that view a little bit of the longer street. It also helped us in the tree survey that we put together. It also helped us kind of identify an additional area of trees that we could help preserve there. So we tried to pull that up as much as we could without really impacting kind of the open space in the center there. Everything we do from this point really has kind of an impact on the open space, and we're really trying to create kind of a very unique open space that will be usable for both the townhome and the tiny home for us. So in addition to that, the tree survey, as I mentioned, we increased the side yard setbacks. We made this a.
Gary, can I interrupt you just for a second? Do you mind referencing this video monitor on the front end here?
What's that?
There's two monitors here. Can you
Okay.
reference the one that the zoning commission can see?
On our camera.
Well, we just can't see that screen. Sorry about that.
Okay, so we made a connection here to this piece of property that was trapped. We added a little bit of a bend to this road here to create a little bit of curvature and to create a little bit more spacing here where we can save some of those trees. We we removed some of the lots here, which also helped us to kind of improve the distinction between the access to the townhomes and the patio homes. And then we made this full access connection point as requested. And then also increasing the side yard setback. So those are the major changes. And then everything else is really kind of in tweaks around the edges. If you want to go to the next one, Steve. Let's move to the, well, here you can see, this is very similar to what we had before. We tried to keep the open space pretty much similar. We had to squeeze things and massage things a little bit, but we tried to keep the same features and everything in the open space that we had before. Everybody seemed to be pretty happy with what we had in there before. And then if you want to go to the landscaping plan, I know there was some mention in the comments and by the commission was that including some buffer along the south between our homes and the existing homes along Cheshire. And so you can see now we've got, because we have that ditch in there, we don't have a lot of space to work, but we tried to include a landscape buffer along the property line of the backs of these homes, especially in areas where we had kind of gaps in those existing trees. So we tried to fill all of those gaps and we included some additional landscaping along the backs of those homes. And it's kind of hard to read because they don't really appear that much different from the just general circles for the existing trees. But these larger circles are existing trees. And then the circles with patches in them are the new trees. And then the other thing that we did, we had a lot of conversations about Sunbury Parkway and the landscaping along Sunbury Parkway. So we went in and substantially beefed up the buffer along Sunbury Parkway to include a 4-foot mound and then staggered double rows of evergreens. And we're mixing in evergreens, deciduous trees, and ornamental trees, so we get some variety there. So it's not just one continuous line of evergreen trees, which I think a lot of times tends to look kind of awkward. I like to see things look a little bit more natural. So this gives us, some fall color. It also gives us some spring flower. And then it gives us that evergreen base that's really kind of important to kind of creating that look. And then we'll have the horse fence along Sunbury Parkway. So as that gets built in the future. The good thing here, from our standpoint, is that Sunbury Parkway is probably still a ways off. We don't really know exactly how far off it is. There's a lot of connection to be done between there and there. So by the time this buffer gets planted, it'll have, I think, some time to grow and establish before the parkway ever really kind of gets through there and gets connected up where it's supposed to go. So those are really the major changes. I don't know. The signage is pretty much the same. If you want to just scroll up through there. So this was kind of the open space. And this is, again, very similar to what we had before. in that creating some space for a community garden, and the pavilion, and the walking trails through, just trying to create a different experience as you move through that property. And then this is the signage and the fencing. And so the signage, this is really an indication of what signage is going to look like. It's a bit odd because we don't really have a lot of frontage on any actual existing major road yet, because Sunbury Parkway is not through. And where our property starts is pretty far back on Kittner Parkway. And so we're kind of at the back end of that. So our signage won't be really out on 36, 37. It's really going to be kind of at that front end of the property. So you're going to have to kind of drive past those existing businesses to really see that. And this is just kind of a color version of what that sign's going to look like. Just a stone base monument with a typical monument sign, Kittner Crossing, and a kind of column on the side. And then just a sample of some of the architecture. And again, we can go through that more in detail depending on what the commission really wants to discuss. We've got everybody here to kind of go through that with me. So with that, I'll turn it over to the commission, and I'm sure there's plenty to discuss.
Thank you, Gary. Do we want to go into engineers' comments this morning? Would that be okay, Mr. Hall?
Absolutely. I'm going to start off on page 4 of my memo, just basically the front portions, information that you already know, contextual information surrounding land use, comp plan, et cetera. So starting in on page 4, Gary mentioned most of them, but these were the changes since the last application. Couple related to density. I just wanted to make sure the commission's aware. Sub-area A, the density decreased from 112 to 107 units. Sub-area B decreased from 85 to 81. So there was a decrease in the density from the prior application. Overall gross density decreased from 4.99 to 4.72 dwelling units per acre. And you'd be aware of that. Again, and then within sub-area A and B on gross density from 6.66 to 6.61 and from 3.69 to 3.44. The creation of the public road connection to Cheshire was mentioned already, so that's been addressed. The creation of the additional public street D, which provides some access to that lot that was previously landlocked, so that's been taken care of. And there's been compliance with the request to reduce the number of 6-unit townhouse buildings from 4 to 2. So now there's just 2 6-plex units in the proposal. And then there's been a 40-foot landscape buffer provision added between the development or the rear of the townhomes and future Sunbury Parkway, which will be a 4-foot mound, evergreen, deciduous, and ornamental trees. We added additional comments further back in the memo to include some grasses and some other, I'll call them short-term growth, to where they get some height and they're robust, because the initial starting size on a few of the plantings can be small. Item 7 was just the equestrian fence, and it's actually a 4-rail black that's being recommended. And I think you indicated that on your the exhibit with the fence, but so 4-rail is the preference there. And the side yards has increased to 12 feet versus the original 10 feet. So that's a quick summary of the major changes, just to repeat that. I think that's important to repeat that. And I'll pause there for any questions, if there's any questions on those major changes, just because there's a lot of information in this memo. So I'm going to go through a bunch of things here and wanted to be sure you had a chance to. So jump in and ask any questions, please. Moving on to the bottom of page 5 on the density, I wanted to be sure the commission understood the comments related to the comprehensive plan, which was a 2016 document, and then the zoning ordinance. So just in regards to the comprehensive plan, the density for a portion of this site was recommended at 3 dwelling units per acre. What's being provided is 3.44. Just a detailed note there, the comprehensive plan is working off a net developable acre and not a gross. So the application is the 3.44 is a gross density. It's not a net density. So it didn't subtract out your detention basins and right of ways and other things. So it's still close, but, and again, the comprehensive plan is not the zoning ordinance. It's just a guidance document. But I do want to point out that it does vary from the comprehensive plan, and it was not calculated to net density. As far as the multifamily, the comprehensive plan recommended that this would be applicable use and recommended 6 units per acre of gross, and what is being presented is 6.61. We feel that that's appropriate. And then as far as the zoning ordinance, the way the PRD code defines density for planned residential district is 2.5 units per acre. And then there's 4 items there that if complied with can add 1 unit per acre on top of the 2.5. So in summary, right at the top of page 7, we are recommending, or not recommending, but we feel that they meet item 1, which is that this property is adjacent to a thoroughfare, which is Sunbury Parkway. They meet item 2, which is it's a was it 2 or 3? Yeah, so 2. They did meet because they're providing the public access to Cheshire Road, which is adjacent to the middle school. So we felt that was close enough in proximity. And then 3 is the one, the architecture needs to be high quality building design. And we presented some building standards in here. And I know the applicant followed up on a rear elevation of the townhouses to further illustrate what those would look like. So with 3 of those met, added to the 2.5 gets you to 5.5 units per acre. Their gross is 4.72. So they are meeting that PRD density. It's a little complicated on the way that density is calculated, but that's the way the code has. So I wanted to explain that. Moving down at the bottom of page 7, the development standard for the single family patio homes. The application still has 20 feet in it. We are recommending 25 there just to allow for let's make sure that, yeah, just to allow for additional parking space within a driveway. So to summarize that paragraph, what's in the application currently is 20. We would recommend 25. So that would be a zoning text amendment. And what I want to end up with as some action items from the meeting is whatever the commission feels as far as taking on our recommendations, we need to modify that zoning text. So I have noted in here which ones we're going to need to take action on and include as a zoning text change so that we capture all those pieces and parts as we move through it. So it's a little complicated, but that's the first item that we're going to need to modify the zoning text if you're in agreement. The other piece, item C on page 8, is the side yard setbacks. This is just a note. It's gone from 5 to 6 feet per or 12 feet total. We need to identify in the zoning text if things like cantilevered fireplace chases, condensing units, window wells, eaves and overhangs are allowed to encroach into that side yard setback. So we just need to have that information in the zoning text. I think in general, what I would like to have is a clean zoning text document at the end of this approval or not approval, is not to have things in the deed restrictions, but have everything in the zoning text so that the future zoning inspector has a real clean document then to review. So that's kind of the basis of a little bit of this detail, is to really spell out if the condensing unit can be in between the homes or it's going to be on the rear of the unit. So if you look at the homes on Common Bend, they sometimes show in between the units and some are in the rear. So I just want that to be a clear point to make sure we drill down on that. Now, as far as the rear setback, again, this is some detail. We feel the setback's adequate. There's some things with it that, for instance, deck can encroach. The current setback's 25 feet. The deck can encroach up to 10 feet, which would be 15 feet from a rear lot line. But it's also stated that a 3-season room can encroach into that rear setback, which we feel is part of that structure, and it's not really a deck. So that's a living area that we would recommend not encroach into that rear, because then that 3-season room would be 15 feet from a rear line. And that's too close in our opinion. Part of that would be just clearly specifying in the zoning text if things like sheds, gazebos, pools are permitted. It's not clear. And again, those can be put into a deed restriction, but those can end up being 100-page documents. So I just want that clearly stated in the zoning text. Let's see. As far as the lot coverage, what's right now in the code is 30%, which is states buildings. The applicant's requesting for a 50% lot coverage. We just want some clarity on that in the zoning text, and I won't go into the detail on that, but that again requires some zoning text amendments. I think it's reasonable. I think all of these are reasonable zoning text amendments. So they just need to be worked out as far as the final piece of the zoning text. Page 9, item 5, front setback. This is going on to the development standards for the townhomes. Again, the application has a 20-foot setback. We recommend a 25-foot setback. Item D, encroachments. Again, it's just to clarify if decks or patios will be permitted on the rear of the townhomes. So again, a clarity on the zoning text for that item. Page 10, item 6, the traffic impact study still needs to be completed. So once that's completed, any fair share contributions from the development would be rolled into the development agreement. Excuse me. Item 6C, page 10, just noted there that the alignment of Sunbury Parkway needs to be considered. I think we need to consider this for the whole property, as been discussed already. That, the balance of this property is not part of this zoning approval, so we need to take into account with the landowner that does own that property on how the right of way for the parkway is going to be accommodated. And item 6D, important point, that the future connection of Kintner Parkway to Sunbury Parkway is being recommended to restrict that to a right in, right out. That's the section of Sunbury Parkway at that location will be a 30-foot median with two 12-foot lanes each way. So it's not practical to have a full access intersection at that point. So it had to be a right in, right out. I wanted to mention item 8B on page 11. Just some discrepancies between the PRD zoning text and the landscape plan, being exhibit G1. There's some differences. The PRD zoning text indicates evergreen trees shall be 6 feet. The landscape plan has 5 feet called out. So there's some detail there on the landscape plan, which the zoning text calls for a 2-inch caliper. The landscape plan has 1.5 inches. So we would need to amend the development plan and the zoning text for that. Moving on to item 9 on page 13. Just architectural design in general. Under part B, the townhomes, item 2, fencing. This just needs to be, I'd say, cleaned up in the zoning text as far as what the fencing materials and how much fencing is going to be allowed for the townhomes in the rear of the properties. Is it going to be a privacy fence, or are we going to allow complete enclosure of the rear patio? And we need to clearly state that in the zoning text, because if it's an enclosure of the patio, then that would be more of a continuous fence along that rear of the townhomes, which will face Sunbury Parkway, which is okay, but we would want that all the same uniform height and color. So just some detail there. And then we would also recommend aluminum be allowed as a material as well. The items in the memo that I am not going through, I felt like were either addressed or did not require a zoning text amendment. So that's why I'm skipping some items there. Be glad to read through everything, but I'm sure you've read it. Page 14, item 6, the proposed design standards for the townhomes. This is highlighted in a kind of a brown shade there on. Continues on page 15 and part of page 16. We took a stab at developing the building material standards for the townhomes. So I know this will be a point of discussion, and not going to go into all this, but some highlights are water table brick, natural materials. As far as colors, we comment on theirs, should be muted tones in shades of white, beige, tan, yellow, gray, or brown, green, red, and blue. Talks about different architectural components here and dormers and balconies, etc. So there's a lot of information there. And again, I think that needs to be just worked through with the applicant as a condition, and to amend the zoning text appropriately. Going on to page 16. This would be the building standards for the single family patio homes. General comment there would be to limit the use of vinyl siding. So we didn't really specify a percentage there, but we would like to see a reduction of the vinyl siding on those units. Fencing, again, we recommended aluminum be added as a permitted fencing material. And that fencing should only be permitted in the rear yard, which would obviously happen, but again, it's just the zoning text item that we felt needed to be added. As far as the elevation, we have a recommendation that there's a couple of the elevations, if you notice in the materials, one is the Prestige and the other is the Mystic, that do not have a covered porch versus the units that have the covered porch. Just from an architectural look, we would highly recommend that the front facades for the patio homes have a covered porch or a projection such as a bay window. It just gives those units a much better look. Item 10 at the bottom of page 16 was just a phasing plan. I feel like that can be addressed in another document. I don't know if that's really critical to the rezoning, so we could address that later, depending how the development proceeds. Same for the item on the top of page 17. I just made a note there that the schedule for this development, I don't think is a critical factor in the rezoning. That can be included as part of a future decision point. Item 11, miscellaneous considerations. We are requesting an estimate of the total lot coverage for the entire site of the development plan. It's not calculated. And by lot coverage, I mean total buildings, impervious area, et cetera, just so we have a baseline there to assess any future building within this area. Just the detail, item 11B, the zoning ordinance does not define townhomes or patio homes, so we would ask for a strict definition in the submittal documents for future reference. Item 11C needs to be addressed as well. It's limited parking is available for both the townhomes and the patio homes, so we had recommended a visitor lot that just be provided somewhere within the development for visitors. Item 11E, we should have discussion whether a TIF or a NCA should be supported for the offsite infrastructure needs of this development. So I think that's a decision point that can happen in the future. I wanted to mention that. So on page 18, item 12, this is just a summary of the divergences. And I think we've been through most of these. We've been through A, which is the intensity of use. We've been through B, which the application has 20. We're recommending 25. We've been through C, which is the front setback of the townhomes. Again, application has 20. We're recommending 25. Side yard's been addressed to 12 feet, 6 feet, and then 12 total. Item E's been, it's a divergence, the 25 feet from the 40 in the code, but again, all those detailed items on the rear yard setback as far as not allowing a 3-season room to encroach within that 25 feet. And that type of detail needs to be in the zoning text amendment. Item F was the maximum lot coverage. That's a divergence. The applicant's requesting up to 50%. We feel that that's reasonable. We just want that to be all inclusive of buildings, accessory buildings, other impervious areas. Item G was the structure separation divergence, and that is from 25 feet to 12 feet. So that is acceptable in our opinion. And that concludes the summary of the divergences. The last page of the memo just provided some front elevations of townhomes that we feel would be applicable for, that would meet the building standards that we had listed. One note on the garage frontages that we talked about before was we recommended a hard percentage in the building standards of 70%. And I was talking internally with our team, and what we think is provided right now is probably more in the 80-85% range. So what that would mean would be wider portions of the building on the sides of the garage door, and the entryways would be a little bit wider, so that garage door frontage percentage was about 70% in the front instead of 80 or 85. So sorry for all the detail, but wanted to kind of go through that and just note in general, we feel like it's a good application, but we just need to work through the zoning text amendments, and those can of course be a conditional approval to work through all those zoning text amendments.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any questions or comments from the commission?
I have just a couple comments / questions. I really like the representative photos. I've been looking at through the internet myself, because I know there's lots of townhomes and condos and everything that has the garage in the front, and pictures that you show were quite a few of the ones I've seen. So I appreciate that. The snowplow access to that closed lot, that new access road that they're including to get to the closed lot, will snowplow be able to maneuver that road? That's kind of a question for staff. It was hard to tell.
The dead end on Road D,
Yeah, because it goes to the lot, and until they,
can drag the plow backwards for that short run. I mean, there's no turnaround there. But until that lot's developed, so it would just be a short portion there.
okay,
I don't know that footage, it's not very far, but the plow would make a left onto that private drive, and then there'd just be that short extension there that would have to be maintained.
Okay.
And they'll probably either push that forward or drag it back, depending what happens there.
I was also interested in the 50% coverage, because I was reading in their master HOA type thing that they can have an in-ground pool, and would an in-ground pool be part of the 50%?
That's what we asked for clarity, that we feel all of that is part of that
Okay,
percentage.
so that's part of that
Buildings,
clarity.
patios,
Yeah.
yes, correct.
Okay. Community garden, is kind of a question for you guys. Community gardens kind of come and go and everything, and then in the fall, people just kind of leave them. And is that going to be part of the maintenance of the community area, or will those individual people be responsible for that? I couldn't tell by the language.
I think we're gonna have to think through that one a little bit.
Okay.
And
Been around them enough that I know that's an issue, the fall cleaning. Nobody ever comes back to clean out there, and it leaves a mess.
right.
The other thing is we're asking for the traffic study and everything. What is our use for that?
What is our use? So what the traffic study will illustrate is any impacts from the traffic generated on this site that impact the surrounding intersections. So if it were to require a turn lane or a signal improvement or something along those lines, that would be indicated in the traffic impact study. And it may not trigger something, but it would put a percentage in there and a dollar amount that the applicant would have to contribute. And then we would use that later to make that.
So there's already language set up that if it triggers a certain point, that they would have to contribute to
Right.
help with public infrastructure.
Right. And
Okay.
we would include that in the development agreement. So we would take that piece of information and then a document that would happen after this approval or not. You know, if this were to be approved, then there'd be a development agreement. And then in the meantime, the traffic impact study would be complete, and we would include recommendations in the development agreement.
And the last thing kind of ties in with that, the sanitary sewer capacity. How does that work with the timing? We know there's not capacity for this property, but we zone it. How's the timing work on getting that done? And
So Plan A would be to ideally extend the Little Walnut Creek trunk sewer north and take care of this property and take that Cheshire pump station offline. But if that doesn't happen, we've worked with the applicant's engineer, which would be a Plan B, which would be the wet well size of that pump station is large enough that the pumps could be increased, and they do have a force main route that would go south across the roadway through the middle school property, and we've oversized portion of the sewer in the Price Ponds development to account for that. So there's a backup plan if the Little Walnut Creek trunk sewer doesn't time out with the development.
so basically, we've got language somewhere that there's stopping points where we can't end up with the patio homes and the townhomes built, but no sewer.
Correct. We wouldn't allow that to happen. We'd do either Plan A or Plan B as far as the sewer expansion.
Any questions?
Just a quick question, because you asked awesome questions and your report was thorough. So the townhomes and the patio homes will both be built by Pulte and built to own.
Yes, ownership.
Sorry, do you have any?
Well, you had a few recommendations for the setback, like from the front setback from 20 to 25. Is that something that's agreeable, or is that something we still need to?
Yeah, I think on the patio homes, I think we have the room to do that. Our lots are deep enough that I think we can accommodate a 25-foot front setback. And still have room to fit the house and the patio. I agree with what Wes is saying. I was looking through the text trying to find out where we had 3-season rooms. And I didn't realize it was in the divergences. It's not actually in the text for the patio homes or the townhomes. So I agree, we shouldn't have 3-season rooms in the setback. So we'll get that revised. So yes, I think we can do a 25-foot front setback on the patio homes. I don't think that's a big deal. On the townhomes though, the only challenge that we have is that the more length we add in the driveway, everything just moves down. So what we're really doing is shrinking that open space more and more. Now, maybe there's a compromise in there. Maybe instead of 20 feet, it's 22, but not 25. Just to give you a little bit extra room for the car. And that 20 is also going to be from the back of the sidewalk or the back of the curb, whichever, because we're gonna have sidewalk on one side of the street there. So there's some additional room there as well.
I have a similar question.
Yeah.
I'm glad you answered that, Gary.
He's gonna add some more.
All right, thank you.
Matt Callahan, Pulte Home. Sorry, can I just, Mr. Mayor, may I jump in on what Gary was talking about on the setbacks and the rear yard encroachments? The way these were set up, we try to give the maximum choice to the buyers for all of all the lots, so they can select all the options and all the homes. The sunroom's typically an option that buyers sometimes select, sometimes they don't. But we like to make it available if they do. We've got two different recommendations in the report. One was for the driveway. The front setback to push the driveway is a little bit further back. The other one is on the rear encroachment into the setback. As far as the 20-foot setback on the front, that's what we've used over at the retreat at Sunbury, the common event loop, which some of you may be familiar with. We haven't really had a problem or complaints, at least as far as I'm aware of, unless they've come to the city and there's been problems with it, but we haven't had a problem with that in terms of accommodating parking in the driveway with that 20-foot setback. If we're able to keep the 20-foot setback, we can limit that rear yard encroachment from what was in the text at 10 to 5 feet, which keeps the structure as a minimum of, I think, 15 feet from the rear line instead of 10. If we push back the parking setback, or pardon me, the front building setback in order to provide an additional 5 feet parking, which may or may not be needed, it's going to force us to have to look at what we can do in the rear, because we just, one way or another, we're kind of condensing the buildable area, and what in turn happens is we limit the choices that are made available to the buyer. So I don't know if there's a preference from the commission, the city, as to which one would be better. You know, it's something, if we need to take some more time to look at it, we can do that. And, you know, it's just important for us to be able to provide that, you know, space that the buyer can choose all the available options that they would want to find.
I think one of the other things that's important to that conversation too, and I was just discussing this with Matt, for the patio homes, the way I hold the patio homes, no sheds, no in-ground pools. So we're going to update the text to eliminate all those accessory buildings, because when they do common maintenance on patio homes, they don't want all of that obstruction in the back. They want a nice, clean, uniform look. So a lot of those things that would normally be in the rear yard won't be in the rear yard. So you'll have the option of, like Matt said, the sunroom, a deck or a patio, but really that would be it on the patio.
I want to see if I can get you some more space here, which is what I was trying to do. On 50-foot right away on the bottom street here, give me a comparison street where we have 50-foot right away.
Well, that's, is that 20 feet from back of curb on that particular one?
I think so. But common bed would be a 50-foot right away, wouldn't it?
50-foot right away on common bed? The small
yeah.
patio homes, the 50-foot right away?
Look at common bed. I mean, most of the local streets in Sunbury Meadows are all 50s. So not.
That's too wide, is what I'm saying.
Oh,
The Sunbury Meadows is too.
Well, not
The right of way, not the street. The right. of way.
Right.
not
understood.
Sunbury Meadows itself, but those those local streets that branch off of there.
Okay. So we can't scrunch that road more, correct?
It gets difficult, and I don't want to speak for Wes, but you also have utilities that have to be accommodated in the right of way, as well as the street and stormwater, piping and easements for those and all those things. And a lot of those things are contained in the right of way, which is why you get a 50-foot right of way for a 28-foot street. The only way you can really reduce the right of way is reduce the street width, and then you're getting into, you know, again, narrower streets, which we all love. But then the fire department starts to complain. And I think right now we're already limited to parking on one side of the street opposite the fire hydrants. So reducing that street further might be more a challenge for the fire department.
I think the public street at 50 is about as tight as we can get, because once you consider that back of curb to back of curb, a tree lawn and the sidewalk, it's pretty well taken up. Now on the private streets different, because there is no right of way, you know, where the townhomes are. But the public street where the patio homes is, 50s pretty much our minimum to really accommodate everything.
Now Mayor, we have those drawn in right now as 130 feet deep lots, which are pretty deep for a patio home lot. So I think, as Matt said, we can go back and take a look at it and just take a look at their product, see how it fits within the setbacks we have established, see how it would fit within a 25-foot front setback and what kind of encroachment we would need on the rear. But again, the only encroachment wouldn't be receiving rooms, it would be then just the patios or decks, which are really just separate structures for the most part. So we can take a further look at that just to make sure that we're not limiting their ability to option out for the buyers. I think it's really important.
All right, I'm just going to list out requirements. And this is a drag strip, even though there's a slight meander. The road is going to encourage speeders to cut through here. This is going to be connecting the Sunbury Parkway to 3637. That's number one concern. Number two, what I'm trying to do is free you up space so it doesn't feel so constricted on the private street, which is 24-foot wide, 4-foot sidewalk, which is equivalent to Romanelli's private drive over here on the patio homes. The only difference is the townhomes are 2 stories, and it's going to feel like they're on top of you with garage doors being at 80%. So we need to solve for that. I very much appreciate the mounding. I very much appreciate the dense landscape buffer. I appreciate the new access point to Street C. Appreciate you reducing the density. I appreciate you being thoughtful around the open space. But we've got to solve for long-term, how does it feel to actually walk down this private street? Because I think you're only putting sidewalks on one side. It's going to be tight. And I don't want people to speed in between here. So we're looking at this in current condition, but there's going to be a 6-lane highway that more or less is right north of your property that people are going to try to cut through.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah, I think the townhomes, there's less danger of that because the roads are narrower. And, you know, part of the appeal to bring the townhomes in a little bit is that it does feel a little bit tighter. And so psychologically, you don't have that feeling like I can speed through here because it's wide open.
Right.
And, you know, you see that a lot in downtowns where you have houses that are, you know, 5 feet off the street in more urban areas. So I think that probably all pencils out okay. I think the bigger concern, and I think what you're talking about is kind of the cut through and through the patio. And that's something that I think we're probably going to have to think about a little bit, how we deal with that. And I think we'll have to come back on that.
Okay.
There's probably a solution in there. The key is how do you do it without putting in things that everybody hates, like giant speed bumps and speed tables. How do you do it so that, you know, everybody feels comfortable driving through there, but at a slow pace, which is really the goal.
Yeah, Spike, I heard Spike Strip.
Spike Strip.
Which is not a bad idea. But if you reduce the lot size, I mean, I don't know if we want to get really creative, but you know, medians and things like that, I mean, can slow traffic down. If you're going to reduce the lot sizes, but and then that wants maximum amount of options for the buyers as well.
Yeah, well, I think in this market, I mean, I think what he's seeing is that a lot of buyers are optioning up. Just because they're coming out of houses, they have a lot of equity already. And so they're taking that equity and they're putting it in their new, you know, long-term retirement home, basically. Is what it ultimately ends up being. So we'll take a look at that and we'll come back with some recommendations. I know we have some other cleanup things to do. One thing I do want to do, probably just for the benefit of all of us, since we have a pretty short board tonight, and we have some things that really need to get cleaned up in the text and those kind of things, I would really like to have kind of a discussion on the architecture because we really need to get this solved by the next meeting, ultimately, because we're kind of dragged this out a little more than 4 minutes would like us to. So to the extent that we can work through some of these and get some recommendations tonight, I guess I will start off on the architecture, and I'm going to let Matt finish this discussion because he knows his product way better than I do. I do want to go back to a little bit of what we're trying to accomplish here with what we have, in that, you know, we have, when we initially bought the property, you know, we looked at, okay, how do we develop it under the existing zoning? Nobody really liked that alternative. The city didn't like it. We didn't like it. And so we tried to figure out a way to kind of do this better. And, you know, so we looked at the recommendations of the comprehensive plan, and I think the comprehensive plan was pretty well put together. I think they're pretty good recommendations. And so we really tried to follow that. And instead of just doing a multifamily at 6 units to the acre, we thought, let's bring a product into the marketplace that doesn't exist today, which is the for sale townhomes, which is the ownership townhome. Now, the appeal to the ownership townhome is from a lot of different perspectives, but one is it is not as foreboding as taking out a mortgage on a single family home. So if you're wanting to come into the city of Sunbury, but you're not at that point where you can afford, you know, $4,000 or $400,000 house, or you're younger, and you know, those kind of things, you're looking for product that really meets your needs, and you're looking for a price point that you can afford to get into and stay in the city of Sunbury. And so we're really looking at that product to try and hit a price point. And I know I don't want to use the term affordable housing because in reality, these townhomes are going to be $350,000, and in nobody's universe is that really considered affordable. But it's more affordable than a single family home. And so the problem that we're all running into is if we push the architecture so much that the price of that townhome gets up closer to the range of the single family home, people will just go to the single family home. We won't be able to market those townhomes. And so I think Matt's got some ideas on what he can do from an architectural standpoint to kind of satisfy some of the city's concerns. But I think, and I know Wes, you said that you put these together kind of as a starting point. They're probably the most stringent architectural standards for any project that I've seen in the city of Sunbury. So
That's for sure.
well, yeah, one of the things that I would like to say overall, from a cost standpoint and a maintenance standpoint, we have to be able to keep the vinyl siding. And there's a number of reasons for that. Number one, the new vinyl siding, I don't know how familiar you are with it, but now vinyl siding is being done in thicker widths. So it doesn't wave like the old vinyl siding. It doesn't chalk like the old vinyl siding because it has a lot of additives in it. It comes in a variety of different colors, and it also comes in a variety of different shape profiles. So they can emulate board and batten siding. They can emulate cedar shake siding. A lot of different profiles that you can use with that. And to be honest, the newer, because of the quality of that newer vinyl product, it looks just as good as Hardy Plank. And it will look better in 15 years than Hardy Plank. Especially if Hardy Plank isn't maintained, because Hardy Plank needs to be painted or stained every few years to keep up the appearance. And so it's much easier from a long-term maintenance and cost standpoint, which is better for the owners in that community ultimately and the association, because the exterior of those, are they going to be maintained individually, Matt, or will the exterior be maintained by an association? Yeah. So it's an HOA ultimately that maintains the exterior of those townhomes. So it's less long-term maintenance costs. It's better longevity for the product. Now, that doesn't mean that some natural materials can't be incorporated. There's probably a balance in there, and I'll let Matt speak to that more. The other thing too, I think before we really knew 100% that Matt was going to be involved or that Pulte was going to be involved, we were trying to keep things relatively generic from an architectural standpoint. The good news is now we've got a product and a builder, and he can come back with elevations and different things or standards that will help to meet some of those requirements. On the rear of the townhome, I think we understand what everybody's getting to, and the concern is over the look from Sunbury Parkway. I think the increased buffering will go a long way towards solving some of that. And I noticed the discrepancy in the landscape. We'll get that fixed. Going back to what we initially recommended was a stone water table, but as we take a look at that, it might be more advantageous for us to look at how to mix the materials on the elevation themselves, because primarily with the 4-foot mound and the landscaping, really what you're going to see from Sunbury Parkway is the second story, not the foundation of the building. And so it might be more advantageous for us to work through with you on what that full appeal looks like. The one nice thing that I will say about the backs of those buildings, I don't know, Steve, you still have my presentation up? So if you can just roll down to the bottom of that. One thing you'll notice, I keep it on, but these are some examples of the fronts, but we've got some pictures. And again, this is in a different place and it's a different, it's a different community, but so there's different things that they can do. These are, and again, there's no landscaping around here. This was all taken under construction. But if you pull out, one of the things that you'll notice about these townhomes is, well, unlike most of other townhomes that I'm used to dealing with, when you look at the back of a townhome, like in lifestyle communities or whatever, they're just flat. They're flat, and you've got a row of patio doors, and you've got a couple of windows in the back. And there's really a lot of detail on the architecture and the projection and those kind of things And they do a really good job of mixing materials and colors to break down the mass of the building. So what I'd like to, I guess, propose, and I'll let Matt take it from here, but we're gonna come back to you, I think, with some suggestions on how we can more address that look from Sunbury Parkway. Matt, you wanna?
Well, not much to add. If we carry this out, I think you really nailed it. I hope you can tell from the pictures that were shared there that, yeah, as Gary said, these are not just black plain walls without any reveal or interest in the buildings. To the question, these all will be sold as for sale, individual units, either as townhomes or condominiums. Either way, they're all for sale units. And we are trying to get a price point. Just to put it in context, obviously we've been active in the submarket here in Sunbury for quite a while. And, currently we're finishing up selling in Sunbury Meadows, and we're starting up in the New Price Ponds community. On the more affordable homes within those two communities, our base pricing starts right about $420. Now once customers come in and make some selections, do some upgrades, those homes are selling for $450 and up. The average sales price is typically $450 to $460. So we need to hit a price point here that, is under that. It's something that's more affordable. It provides another option for buyers. But we do have to sell these, so we want them to look good, and we understand the concern about, being really part of the gateway into the community on Sunbury Parkway. So there's things we can do that I think can make them look really appealing. We can build off some of the things that we've done here. We could designate, elevations and locations from what we oftentimes call high impact or high visibility locations, add some additional features to those areas to make sure we're hitting, the points that have been made about trying to make sure the architecture is pleasing, looks good, it's not monotonous, and does present a nice front door into the community. And as Gary said, a lot of it, I think, can be done, as you can see here in this picture, the one that's kind of the tannish beige, it's more of a shake siding. You do that on the second floor, and it's going to be a lot more visible coming down the road as you look over mounting trees. So what we'll do is we'll roll up our sleeves and get to work on really trying to provide those details to you and how we can accomplish that, and what I think has been the desire from the city and the engineering and planning consultants from CT.
Sunbury Point's probably a good model in terms of blend of vinyl and natural materials. So Sunbury Point, formerly owned by Champion, you're familiar with it. It's the apartment complex across from General Rosecrans Elementary. They did a nice job blending the different, they had stone fronts, they had brick, but I mean, all of it was vinyl. But to your point, I'm probably less hung up on the vinyl than maybe what our comments reflected. I'm totally on board with vinyl can last longer, but look exactly like hardy plank. And I know there's a significant cost difference as well. But it may be a good reference point just with how they blended it.
Sure. If there's any other thoughts or, comments, we'd love to take those into consideration, but, we think we can, again, hit the mark on what I think everyone's shooting for. So we'll get to work on that.
I do like the different bump outs that I saw on there. One thing I don't like just aesthetically is the white vinyl fence, the PVC. That's not the right term for it, but the white fence.
Yeah, Matt, do you always include the patio, the privacy screen between the patios?
Yeah, that's and just for reference. Those pictures were actually taken in a location in the Greater Cleveland area where Pulte's building similar, and they've built a few more of these townhome type communities than we have. And so what they've really found is that the privacy and separation between the units is desirable by the residents. I think the question is on the look of the vinyl. Is that the right look? Is that the right mark? one of the things we were talking about is keeping them all perpendicular so that, it's not a solid wall going back behind the buildings. Wood's an option, but that, tends to require a lot more maintenance and over the long term probably isn't going to look as good. So I think it's again something we can look at and take into consideration for styles.
I think I know I've seen something that's been aesthetically pleasing. I've been in an EPCON community where the backyards, if you want to call it a yard, are right up against one another and there's privacy fencing. I don't know the material, but I didn't feel like it was. I'm trying to choose my words.
But it's, but they come in different profiles and some of them have like lattice along the top, and so it has some ornamentation and decoration. So we can take a look at some of those different options.
Great, thank you.
And I think kind of given where we are, what we'd really like to do, just so we can kind of nail this for the next meeting, is just see if we can get another meeting set up pretty quickly with staff so that Matt can go back and do his magic. And maybe we can kind of talk through some of these issues and say, okay, here's what we can come up with. And I don't know, Joe, if you're able to be involved in that, I think you may have a pretty good sense of what the commission's looking for. And if anybody else wants to participate or weigh in on that, I mean, we're happy to have that participation. I mean, I think the goal is to get something here that everybody wants to see, and that, sells well in the community. So it'd be great.
Yeah, I'd be happy to help out with that. The next zoning meeting is the 28th. That's the Monday after Thanksgiving. And November seemed to go pretty quick. So I want to get it on the calendar in
Yeah.
that sweet spot, maybe 2 weeks out.
Yeah. I mean, if staff has something available for, another morning meeting, it can be any time. I mean, we'll come anytime, but whatever is most convenient for your schedule. We want to make sure, because we'll work in the meantime, we'll work on some of these other things in the text that we've got to clean up. We'll get a better idea of, maybe we'll draft a kind of a typical or a couple of typical lot plans that just show how the house relates to the setbacks, and the possible options for the house and deck and this kind of thing, to give the commission a better picture of, how those will actually lay out on the lots. Hopefully that will help kind of guide the discussion on the setbacks and kind of things.
Yeah, I think that would help. I think that helped quite a bit for the Eagle Creek subdivision.
Yeah. I think I do remember doing that for Eagle Creek. We can do that here too.
Okay, great. Any other questions, comments from the commission? Right, do we need to make a motion to table? Mr. Whitney?
I don't think you brought it off, so I would say no.
We've just been talking about.
We've been talking informally, so it's still table.
Sounds good.
I think we do want to make sure that we can get it off the table and hopefully move it forward at the end of November, because then we're going to be getting into the holidays and silly season and going into council and everything gets kind of weird. And so we just want to,
Right.
we just want to, and then you'll have, your first of the year meetings and all of those things that you got to deal with. So yeah, getting it moving in November would be ideal.
Sounds good. Okay. All right. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it. All right. We're on to the visitor section. Are there any visitors who wish to speak with the zoning commission this evening? Right. May I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion.
Motion by Cindy Cooper,
Second,
second by John Lawrence. Discussion. Roll call.
Mayor St. John,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence. Yes. Mrs. Miller.
Yes.
Motion passes. All right, discussion, new business. Anyone on the commission? Yep. Sorry, Steve. Zoning report?
Oh, that's okay.
I apologize.
It was in your packet. I think I will highlight that we are have pretty much transitioned to Delaware County Building Safety Department. Now we're a sub-department. And we're getting zoning certificate applications, and those are getting processed out a little quicker. Usually, if it's a pretty straightforward plot plan and architecture, I can deal with it. A few of them I do punt off to CT for a little more detailed work. And let's see. Thanks to the mayor's court, we were able to, we had to go to the point of issuing a violation for the skeleton, but that's been worked out. Let's see. And then finally, just note that we've hit 105 new construction permits issued this year. And that's probably out of date as of when that was written last week. Probably had a couple zoning certificates for new builds after that. So things are very busy. Any questions you might have?
Any questions or comments for Mr. Piles? All right, thank you, Steve. All right, new or unfinished business? Anyone on the commission? All right, are we gonna do any zoning changes, zoning text changes? I know they build up throughout the year and then.
Yeah, we had a brief discussion after the council meeting that we're probably at the point where we need to get our list together and start working through them. So coming events the first quarter of 23.
Yeah, just in that vein, we're getting some requests for some unique types of development that don't necessarily fit one code or another. Like a lot of the developments we're getting right now, just the ones we've been dealing with lately are more in the residential space, but these are more in the commercial, light industrial, aerospace engineering fields. No, sorry, that was things of that nature that I think we may need to either adopt a new code or amend a code and speak to our peers about just different zoning codes that we may want to incorporate into our playbook. All right.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
Well, one thing I noticed, and this is something that this from a practitioner on this side of the table. One thing that we've struggled with the city of Sunbury and a number of different projects is just how prescriptive your PUD is. And I think part of that is it's just older. And it was developed at a time when development was really kind of done a certain way. And a lot of things have changed in the development world. And what you guys are finding, and I think you noticed this too, is that everybody's having to ask for so many divergences, to go through the PUD process because we're just not developing, typical 80-foot lot, houses and subdivisions. And so it might be beneficial for the city to look at adopting maybe a more open PUD, I guess. And I can give you some examples of what that would look like. It would give the city and the developer an opportunity to spend more time negotiating without having to deal with when we need a divergence from these 10 things in order to be able to make this work. And you could write a PUD in such a way. I did this for Jerome Township a while back. Write the PUD in such a way that it incorporates also, commercial development, mixed use development, industrial development. I mean, I know you have different PUDs for those as well, but I'd be happy to talk to you about it if you.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. All right. Next meeting date, November 28th, 2022. And I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Second. Discussion. Roll call.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Mayor St. John.
Yes.
Are adjourned at 7:46.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you. I'll relay that. Right.